Hey, what's up guys? OJ here. Welcome back to another video. Today we've got a interesting discussion because this was prompted by something that I saw on Twitter the other day, and we'll get into all of that. But before we get into it, guys, please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, and click that notification bell for awesome discussions on video games and more. So let's go ahead and get right into this here. And like I stated before, on Twitter, I actually saw somebody put up a post, because Twitter's the best place to get opinions, and they stated that out of the big three, so Nintendo with the Switch, PlayStation, and Xbox, that if you had to pick one, Switch would be the one that you don't pick because of third party and stuff like that. And I can completely understand that sentiment. I mean, that's been something that's been said for quite some time now when it comes to like Nintendo hardware, because they don't get all the big third party games and all that. But when I cross-reference it, maybe with like the actual data and the sales and the stuff that I'm going to talk about here, it kind of shows that many people are actually picking the Switch over PlayStation and Xbox, and they're completely fine with their purchase and buying games and having fun and actually using that system as their main system, because you can't really deny the sales numbers that the Nintendo Switch is doing here. And as you guys see in the title, how the underpowered Nintendo Switch is selling better than the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series. And actually, even if you align it with the PlayStation 4 or you align it with the Xbox One, it's kind of blowing those systems out of the water as well, while blowing out the Xbox One for sure, and definitely beating the PlayStation 4. So it would have sold better then, and it's selling better now at this point. And we'll talk about other things as well. So I want to first and foremost say, guys, this is not a Switch is perfect video. Obviously, Nintendo can do things better, and I think that they will. There's stuff like Nintendo Switch Online that can get better. The Joy-Cons obviously can get better, and Nintendo Switch Online games, right? The online itself, lots of stuff can be improved. So this is not that type of video. So, I'm not trying to sit here and say that it's perfect or anything like that. I'm just trying to explain in terms of what's going on and why it's doing better. What are the key factors? What are the key points? Because some people seem to be confused on that. And you can use this video as a reference from someone who's actually been covering the Nintendo Switch since launch, or actually pre-launch, and covering Nintendo for pretty much a decade now online. Next up, I want to talk about, yes, the chip shortage stuff. Some people are going to rush to that and say, okay, well, the Switch is selling better because of the stock of the PlayStation 5 and also of the Xbox Series. And I would agree with you if the Switch wasn't selling better launch aligned than two of the best selling systems of all time. With the Nintendo Wii, which launch aligned, it's selling better at a faster rate than that system, and it's also selling better at a faster rate than the PlayStation 2. It actually already outsold the PlayStation 2 in Japan as well, so it's selling better than some of the best selling systems of all time. So yes, maybe the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series would be selling as good as those systems if they had stock, but maybe not. We don't know at this point. And what we do know is that the Switch is launch aligned selling faster than some of the best selling systems of all time. So the Switch could still be outselling these systems even if there was more stock in, if you just compare it to the other systems that are some of the best selling systems of all time, with the PS2 being the best selling. So there's also that as well. Now let's go ahead and get into what we're talking about here when it comes down to everything. How Nintendo did this, it's more than just what meets the eye when it comes to it. Yes, there's games and we'll talk about all of that, but I think that it starts at the beginning. It was the combining of their R&D, the portable and home console. That was probably one of the most important things, if not the most important thing Nintendo did, because that was their weakness. That was something that was a little bit of a problem, not even a little bit, a lot bit of a problem, because when you have separate divisions, they can't work together in order to have some unity and I would say cohesion between the games. Stuff that was on both platforms in the past, like Wii and DS and all that, it was really wonky to get those games kind of working together. And we never really had a lot of stuff that was connected. Now, we did have stuff like the Super Game Boy. We did have the Game Boy Advance player, but then it disappeared when it came to the DS and also with the Wii U as well. The 3DS was not part of that. So that's the problem when you do two separate R&D divisions. Now you combine everything into one. You get a hybrid device. Now everything works in unison. All your teams can kind of do one cohesive unit, and you can just design your hardware around that, and then you can branch off from there. So instead of going from separate, then trying to figure out ways to put the systems together like a Game Boy Advance player, you go from together, then you can find ways to branch off from that if you want to go more into like a portable device, right, with the Nintendo Switch Lite, or more of a home console, like, hey, I'm just going to keep it docked, right, which they can do in the future. Now, another thing here is getting all their games, like I kind of alluded to a bit. Getting all their games on one platform, that was one of the most important things. Nintendo always had these great games across the both. You know, they always had great games on the portable side, right? You had Pokemon, you had Fire Emblem, you have all these different games. Sometimes Fire Emblem was on home console, but a lot of times it was not 3DS, it was not. And people would get upset. Fans would get upset with that because they'd have to pick between one or the other. Or sometimes they'd even have to buy like two versions, right? You had Super Mario 3D Land, and you had Super Mario 3D World, right? Whereas on the Switch, you just have Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury. You just have Super Mario Odyssey. You just have one game, and fans that want to play it portably can play it portably. Fans that want to play it home console, docked on their TV, can do that. So it gives the fans some relief when it comes to their wallets because they can just pick up that one game. Many people had to actually just pick because they couldn't afford all the different games Nintendo was putting out across both of the platforms, considering that if you play games on other systems as well, it was just a little bit too much. And if you look at it, the potential was always there for Nintendo to have a system like the Switch in terms of sales, right? Because if you combine the sales of Nintendo's portable devices with their home console devices with every single generation, they would be 100+ million unit sellers every single time for the most part. So this is not something that is too crazy to see that. Now, the rate of the Switch sales is still extremely well, but even the Wii U and the 3DS, if you combine them, I mean, that was even, you know, almost 100 million. They were, you know, a couple 10 million, few or more short. But I mean, at the same time, that still got up there when it comes to it with the 75 million plus of the 3DS and the 14 million, about 14 so million of the Wii U. So even that was almost 100 million when you get down to it. So it's not like this type of concept couldn't have worked overall. Now, next up, I want to talk about Nintendo's decision about what happened back in 2014, 2015, 2016, when the Wii wasn't doing well and they decided to make this hybrid platform. You can look into it. You had to have somebody, Mr. Iwata, who had the vision for the future. Look at the hybrid. That was going to be the future. Combining what you did there, the set-top boxes, that was going to be more of a thing of the past for them. Was this going to be the future? Were people going to respond that way? And they obviously picked right, because even if you look at it, look at what Valve did. Valve didn't make another Steam machine. Valve made a Switch. They made the Steam Deck, which is a hybrid. It's a portable hybrid. You can take it, play your home console quality games on the go. Then you can also hook it up to your monitor, or really any monitor, with a USB base, and you can play it on there. You can use the controller, you can use the Switch controller if you want to. I mean, so they knew that. They saw that. They saw what the PS5 was doing. They saw what the Xbox was doing, and they still decided to say, no, we're going to follow what Nintendo's doing because we feel that is the future to coincide or to coexist with what we're already doing with Steam on PCs. They could have easily made another Steam box and fixed all of the issues the original Steam box had, but it goes to show you that Nintendo had the original right pick when it comes to what to do for the future, or Valve would have never copied them or would have never made a Steam Deck. They would have probably tried to do another Steam box and just made it, hey, let's just make it all under one house. We do it, no multiple configurations. We just pick maybe like one or two configurations and then we get it out there, instead of letting other vendors kind of put together different configurations for these boxes. So I think that that shows that Nintendo did have that future vision, and that's part of the reason why that it is doing so well, because it is different than what the other systems are doing. Now, next up, I think that one of the big reasons why that it's doing better is because they are taking the Japanese market. I think that Microsoft and Sony have somewhat given up on that market, and I understand why. They still make the big boxes. Japan, the analytics all show that Japan is moving towards the mobile side of things, the mobile cell phone, right? They're moving towards those type of games, and there's not really a lot of room when it comes to what the Japanese players are playing based off of decades of data now at this point of declining home console sales. Even the Nintendo Wii barely sold 12 to 13 million in Japan, and that was a worldwide phenomenon. But in Japan, it was okay, but the 3DS blew it out of the water when it comes to sales. So it does make sense that a lot of the other platform holders, right, Microsoft and Sony, said, you know what? Yeah, we're still going to be there. We're still going to release. We're still going to have some things, but we're going to kind of go all in on the Western market when it comes down to it. So Nintendo saw that opportunity, right, with the future vision that they had with what they were doing, and said, hey, we can make this hybrid and we can completely take Japan. Now, recently, as of last week, Nintendo actually took 95% of the Japanese market with their sales. They sold nearly 170,000 units. They're selling tons of OLEDs. They're having insane popularity for the platform, and the system has been out since 2017. That just goes to show you that people aren't really worried about some of the other things, the power and all that. They just want a great platform that fits their life and also has great games on it. But having that huge market share in Japan is a big boost. The fact that you can sell 22 million units in that region, considering how many people are there, that is absolutely incredible. And that can help you outsell all the other platforms pretty much every single week when you're putting up those type of numbers, when you're constantly putting up those type of numbers and taking that percentage of Japan. That is a very big deal. I know a lot of Western gamers like to kind of brush that off or put it aside, but at the same time, you can't ignore the fact that it outsold a console like the PlayStation 2 already at this point, you know, considering how short it's been and how long the PS2 was on the market in Japan. So that's a big, big boost to why it's doing better and it's outselling the other systems at this point. Now, next up, I think that one thing that Nintendo did very well with the Switch, and they kind of made all of their franchises like new again. Like, it's the same franchises, but they also reinvented things. They took the traditional franchise and said, okay, we got Legend of Zelda, we're going to reinvent it with this open world, like the original, you know, Legend of Zelda. We got Mario, then we're going to reinvent it like a Mario 64, but add in other things as well. And they also went all in on the indies, right? They have the indie world shows, they started doing that. And when you combined the, I would say, playability and ease of indie games on a platform like the Switch and the first party games that Nintendo has, all of the third-party games that are always missing on the platform are just kind of like, okay, I'll just get it on whatever system and I'll play this system for what it has and what it's good at, because power isn't what it's necessarily good at. Now, and it's good for how much, like, let's say, wattage that it puts out, the fact that it puts out such a small footprint, you know, and everything, yet it can achieve the type of games like Doom Eternal and like Legend of Zelda. That's very impressive. But at the same time, I mean, they focused on what they were good at, and anybody who wanted to make a game on there and find a developer to port over some of their bigger games could do that. So I think Nintendo took a risk with that, but at the same time, it worked out because these are some of the best games in the franchise. Stuff like Fire Emblem, stuff like Mario and Zelda have some of the highest rated, best selling, if not best selling entries in there. So I think they did a good job of reinventing their franchises for this device to be able to be played on the TV and also on the go. And it actually worked very well. So I think that was good too. Now, for the future, I think that this is a very interesting note here. I think I see that Nintendo is going to double down on the hybrid concept, having a more powerful, you know, Nintendo Switch 2 that's probably backwards compatible and it's sold with the dock, and that could be a supplemental computing device to where it kind of feeds a bit more power to the system when it's docked, and then when you take it off, it has less, almost like the hybrid right now, to where you can get higher resolutions because they boost the clock speeds when it's docked compared to when it's not. So I can see them kind of taking that concept and moving it a bit more forward. I think that the Nintendo Switch OLED proved that Nintendo can get $350 for a system. Obviously, you still want to have cheaper models available, but they might be able to push that $400 mark with a way more powerful Nintendo Switch 2 that has a supplemental computing device, and then still have a cheaper model with the regular Nintendo Switch. I mean, but it's going to be interesting to see exactly what they do and where they go with, or maybe they just go with $350 for the next new Nintendo Switch, so the Nintendo Switch 2, but we'll see. But I think that if they do go up in price, obviously the games, the marketing, you know, everything, the hook of the system, whatever they add, it needs to all be on point. You just can't come out with the system and then it's like, all right, it's just backwards compatible and, you know, there's not really many games to play. Like, you have to have the big Mario Kart, you have to have the big Zelda, you have to have something that launches that gets people super excited. In addition to having that backwards compatibility, I think that's a huge thing as well. So we'll see how Nintendo goes about it, but those are my reasons, or those are pretty much most of the main reasons that I would say that the Nintendo Switch is doing better than the Xbox and PlayStation at this point. And I'd also say that this is not a knock on the Xbox and PlayStation. I have the PS5, I have the Xbox Series. This is just looking at it from an analytical point of view, and also looking at it from like a data and looking at what happened, you know, when it comes to how they did this, right? Because this is an underpowered system. We had so many people say that there was no way that the Switch was going to be able to hang with the next systems, and it's doing more than just hanging with them, it's actually beating them. So I wanted to go over it kind of in detail from my point in terms of what I've covered over the past number of years. So what do you guys think about what I had to say here? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and we will see you for the next video. Peace.